This is Algebra 1, Lesson 10.2. We have two multiplying polynomials. Two goals we have are to multiply two polynomials. We discussed what polynomials were last week. And then we're going to use polynomial multiplication in real-life situations. On page 584 is where it begins. First thing is what the definition of FOIL. What FOIL is an acronym that helps you remember to multiply everything inside of two binomials by each other. The first, the F, is for the first two terms. The O is for the outer two terms. The I is for the inner two terms. And the L is for the last two terms. So FOIL reminds you to multiply everything by everything else. And we'll look at an example like that in just a minute. Again, it's just a way to remember to multiply everything. Example number 1 is using the distributive property. If all this problem said was -5 times x plus 7, we'd be able to distribute it with no problem. We're going to do the same thing, except not only are we going to do -5 times x plus 7, we're going to do x times x plus 7 as well. So the first thing it does is it separates that binomial at the beginning. It separates it into x times x plus 7. Then when we do x times x, we get x squared because you add 1 and 1. And x times 7, we get 7x. It separates that binomial at first into -5 times x plus 7. -5 times x is -5x. And -5 times 7 is -35. So you're left with something that says x squared plus 7x minus 5x plus minus 35. Then you combine your like terms. There are two like terms. 7x and -5x. So 7 minus 5 gives you 2, and it's positive, so it's going to say plus 2x in the middle. X squared plus 2x minus 35. This is using the distributive property. And again, all that was different about this is it's a binomial. It's not only x, but it's x minus 5. So you multiply x times the second one and -5 times the second one. Let's do the same thing. Follow the same method on this next one on the back. Find the product of x plus 7 times x minus 7. Separate the first binomial. It says x plus 8. I said x plus 7 a second ago. X times the second binomial, x minus 7. And plus 8 times the second binomial, x minus 7. So just distribute each one of those. X times x is going to be x squared. You add the exponents 1 and 1. X times -7 is -7x. 8 times x is going to be a positive 8x. And 8 times -7 is -56 because a positive times a negative is a negative. So this is not quite finished. You have to combine the like terms. And when you do this, it's always going to be the two in the middle. negative 7x, don't forget the negative, and positive 8x. Negative 7 plus 8 is going to be positive 1. So we have x squared plus 1x minus 56. And this is the product of the two binomials. Example number 2 is the FOIL method. This is almost the exact same thing as what we just did. What FOIL tells you, though, is it just makes sure to remind you to multiply everything by everything else. F stands for first. So this is the first term of the first binomial, x. This is the first term of the second binomial. So to multiply the first terms, you multiply x times 7x. So 7 times 1 would be 7, and you multiply x times x. You add the exponents to get 7x squared. The O stands for outer. So think of it from, this is the middle, this is the outside here. So from the middle of the two binomials, the O are the outer two. X is on the outer side and 1 is on the outer side. So you multiply x times 1 and you get 1x. Disregard this for a second, everybody. We're not to that yet. So you get 1x. The I stands for the innermost ones. So your I stands for inner. That's this one times this one. Those are the two that are closest to the middle or the inside. So negative 5 times 7x is going to be a positive times a negative, gives you a negative 35x. And then L stands for last. Multiply the last two. If x and 7x were the first two, then negative 5 and 1 are the last two. Multiply negative 5 times 1. Positive times a negative is going to be a negative 5. So now you have a polynomial that has like terms in it. You have x or 1x, and you got negative 35x. So you just add 1 minus 35, and you get negative 34x there. So 7x squared minus 34x minus 5. That is the FOIL method. First, outer, inner, last. Use the FOIL method on the back on this one. 2x plus 3 times 5x plus 1. Okay, again, FOIL tells you to make sure to multiply everything by everything else. F stands for the first two terms, F. So your first terms are 2x times 5x. 5 times 2 gives you 10. X times x, you add them up, gives you x squared. O stands for the outer two terms. 2x, notice it's the same 2x, and 1. 2x times 1 is positive 2x. The I stands for the inner two terms, the ones that are closest to the middle, 3 and 5x. 3, positive 3, times positive 5x is positive 15x. And then L stands for the last two terms. If 2x and 5x were the first two terms, then 3 and 1 are the last two terms. 3 times 1 is plus 3. So now we multiplied everything by everything else. The first, the outer, the inner, and the last. The only thing you have to do from here is combine your like terms. Combine 2x and 15x to get positive 17x, and then bring the rest down. Plus 3 and 10x squared. FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. Example number 3 is multiplying polynomials vertically. 4 minus x times 8 minus 11x plus x squared. We cannot use the FOIL method here because it's not two binomials. Notice the second one is a trinomial. So what you want to do first is align the like terms in columns. To multiply two polynomials, remember that each term of one polynomial must be multiplied by each term of the other polynomial. So align like terms in columns. So notice here we have negative x plus 4. That's the first binomial written in standard form. Then we have times x squared minus 11x plus 8. Again, that's written in standard form. Remember from last week what standard form is. Biggest exponent first, then the next biggest, then the next biggest till you get to the one that has no variable at all. That's the constant term. So from here, each term is going to multiply by each term. So right here, this first line is only multiplying 8 times both of them. It's multiplying it by 4 to get 32, and it's multiplying it by negative x to get negative 8x. So 8 times 4 and 8 times negative x. On the next line, we're going to multiply only negative 11 by both of them because we already did 8 times both of them. So negative 11 times negative x is positive 11x squared. And negative 11x times 4 is negative 44x. Notice how they're written. They're written with the like terms on top of each other, or the like degrees on top of each other. X to the first is on top of x to the first. X squared is under x squared. There's no other one. And then the last one is multiplying x squared times both of them. X squared times 4 and x squared times negative x. Negative x to the third because you add 2 plus 1, and negative x squared times 4 is, x squared times 4 is positive 4x. So everything's stacked in like terms now. There's no other constants. So that's going to be 32 there. Negative 8x and negative 44x is going to give you negative 52x. Since there's nothing else here, there's nothing in this column. 11x squared and 4x squared is 15x squared, and there's only one x to the third, negative x to the third. That's combining all your like terms. This is just the vertical method for those who prefer to stack things nice and neat on top of like terms. We'll look at the horizontal method in a minute. Okay, on the back, everybody, do this one. Do it vertically. Do it just like the one we just did. Okay, for this one, we have, just like the example we saw, we have a binomial multiplying by a trinomial. So the first thing you want to do is stack them on top of each other in standard form. So make sure everything in the trinomial multiplies by everything in the binomial. So for the first one, 9 is going to multiply by x minus 4. So 9 times x, we know is going to be 9x. And 9 times negative 4 is going to be negative 36. For the next one, we're going to make sure to multiply 5x by the binomial at the top, x minus 4. 5x times x is going to be 5x squared. And 5x times negative 4 is minus 20x. And then make sure to multiply negative 2x squared times the binomial x minus 4. Negative 2x squared times x is going to be negative 2x to the third power. Negative 2x squared times negative 4 is minus, or negative times a negative will be a positive 8x squared. Then combine your like terms. There's only one constant term. It'll be negative 36. 9x minus 20x is going to be negative 11x. 5x squared plus 8x squared is going to be a positive 13x squared. And then there's only one negative 2x to the third power. So here is your polynomial written in standard form, following the vertical method. The next method is multiplying horizontally. It says find the product 2x to the third minus 9x squared minus 11x times 2 minus x squared. So notice for this one, the trinomial 2x to the third minus 9x squared minus 11x is just broken up. And it's written right next to the binomial each time, 2 minus x squared. So this is just the distributive method like example number 1 was, except it has a trinomial that you're separating. So 2x to the third times 2 is, again, ignore this for right now. 2x to the third times 2 is 4x to the third. 2x to the third times negative x squared is going to be negative 2x to the fifth, because you have to add 3 and 2. The next one, negative 9x squared times 2, is going to be negative 18x squared. Negative 9x squared times negative x squared, a negative times a negative is a positive 9. And then x, you add up the exponents 2 and 2 to get 9x to the fourth. The last one multiplies negative 11x times 2 gives you negative 22x. And then negative 11x times negative x squared, a negative times a negative is a positive 11x, and you add up 1 plus 2 to get x to the third. So when you combine your like terms, remember you're writing it in standard form. The biggest one in standard form is this one, the fifth power. Negative 2x to the fifth goes first. Then the next biggest one is x to the fourth power, this one, 9x to the fourth power. There's only one. Then you have 2x to the thirds. You have 4x to the third plus 11x to the third. So 4 plus 11 is 15x to the third. Then you only have one x squared, negative 18x squared, and you only have one x to the first power, minus 22x. So when you put them all together, it looks like that. Negative 2x to the fifth plus 9x to the fourth plus 15x to the third minus 18x squared minus 22. On the back, do this one. Separate the trinomial and multiply each of the terms by the binomial 6x minus 5. Okay, after you separate it, distribute each of those things as three separate problems, if you will. 5x squared times 6x is going to be 30x to the third. 5x squared times negative 5 is negative 25x squared. Negative x times 6x is negative 6x squared. Negative x times negative 5, and negative times a negative is a positive 5x. Negative 3 times 6x is negative 18x. Negative 3 times negative 5, and negative times a negative is a positive 15. Then put your like terms together. There's only one x to the third, 30x to the third. There are two x squareds. Both of them are right next to each other. Negative 25 minus 6 is negative 31x squared. There are two x to the first powers, 5x and negative 18x, negative 13x, and there's only one constant, plus 15.